finding variations that work for you, whether it is recovering from an injury or your fitness level and your ability to coordinate your body movement, is something that we're going to talk about today. I'm going to show you some variations using both the long box with the foam arc, the Minimax by Hooked on Pilates, and I highly recommend these guys. They're a great addition to your reformer workouts. I'm going to do some variations on the floor, and I'm also going to remove the box and then place my hand on the carriage. So if you know Star, these are all different floor variations that can be done, and then moving yourself back up to some Star prep on the reformer, which is a kneeling version. Hand on the gray strip, or a kneeling version, hand on the foot bar, and then working yourself up to straight legs with full range and load on the shoulder and spine. So I'm going to first, let me take this guy off first, set it aside. Blocking yourself is probably the most important thing in this. Now I'm going to show you where you can start by either, now I've done this so many times, I know my limb length and where it's going to block me. So I'm roughly, and I have about 11-inch feet, so I'm roughly a foot away. If you have the reformer that doesn't drop all the way, then you're going to probably be out a little bit more because the bar is going to block your side of your leg. So for my purposes, you can see the way I like to start this is get my foot parallel to the reformer, step one leg behind me, and lower myself down until I'm blocked. If you need a pad, that's fine. Put a pad right here on this edge. But my goal isn't to stay on there too long. So I've got a red and a blue. For me, that is a great way to support my shoulder during my rehab and my recovery from my shoulder injury. So I'm going to basically just kind of lean down on it and then come back up. Now, by keeping the foot back, that's going to help stabilize my pelvis. I've done it with foot in front as well, so it's completely what's most comfortable for you and your body positioning. So I'm going to put it back, and I'm just going to in and out. Now you can see how small the range of motion is when I block myself. If I want to increase it, I just move my foot away a little bit, bring the foot in front, and noticing I have a greater range of motion. The most important thing when you're doing any sign plank series is that you do not drop the hip or disorganize the shoulders. Those are the two, number one and number two things I'm going to look for. So engage that side hip and then in and out. Now, just for tutorial purposes, I'm going to go back in, reduce my range of motion. Otherwise, I'm going to be dying by the end of this tutorial. So there we go. So I've got my heavier spring tension to support me. Now, as I recover, I want to decrease that, challenging my stabilization. And I may not go all the way down to where I'm blocked. I may go down tiny bit, almost to where I feel it, and then I'm going to lift my hip and I'll hold that there. And I can do little pulses out with my arm. Now, as I start to progress, I'm going to take that leg off and in and up. Now, you can see I'm showing you turned out. You can stack them. It doesn't matter, whatever is comfortable for you. And there's so many great different variations you can do. I'm going to give my shoulder a little bit of rest, and so like 5 minutes, 4 minutes on there. There's some different variations you can do. Now, let's say you have wrist problems, or you have a student with maybe some arthritis. This is going to cause them a little bit of discomfort because of where the thumb pad is, and most people with arthritis are going to have it in that thumb joint as well, or at least that's been in my experience. I've seen a lot of people. So I may want to take this and modify it and do it on the forearm. You can also add an extra pad over there. I have a client, two of them actually, that wear these gloves, and they have a little extra cushion right here, and I'll have to get the name of those because they are amazing. If you know the name, just write a comment down below this video and let me know what they're called. It's on the tip of my tongue and I can't think about it right now, but they're really great for arthritic clients that want to get some strength in their wrists, but don't want to hurt themselves with the wrist. So I'm going to put my leg behind. I'm going to place my hand down, and I'm going to, again, block myself, lift myself up, and just do some little press outs. Now, anytime you're starting with this. The reason why we want to start with this, as opposed to getting them on the carriage. Being on the ground does two things. It offers you a way to block things with the frame, as I mentioned before, but it also takes newer students or students that are not really sure what to do on the reformer. And it's, believe it or not, and I know it seems strange because we've been doing this for so long, those of us have been in the industry for a while, and we think it's no big deal. But when it's somebody's first time getting on a bicycle, it can be a little scary. So keeping them on the ground is pretty cool because it allows them to feel more safe and secure, even though it's the exact same exercise. The other thing, when we do on the carriage and feet on the gray strip or the frame edge, just by being up, especially I have these 18-inch reformers. So just being higher off the ground kind of gives them a sense of instability. So grounding their foot on the ground, really great way to offer them some guidance. All right, so here I am. I'm going to hold the stabilization. Now, whether I'm in a forearm plank or whether my arm is straight, my goal is to really find that extension of the spine. Always keep this engaged. So we can add arms forward, leg back, arm forward. You can do some choreography with the leg. You can do open and close. You can also tell your students as you're doing that, if you start to fatigue, lower down and rest the leg, the thigh. So let's say I'm here and I'm doing my choreography and I'm like, whoa, I can still keep going, but I can allow this to be a rest and then come back up. So make sure you use that frame for new students, or let's say you're doing more of an athletic class and you're just going to prolong the series to really work on strength. What I recommend doing is telling your students, okay, guys, this is going to be 5 minutes on the right side with different variations. So make sure you place the thigh on the frame. We need to give yourself a little bit of recovery. Now, the transition from here, simple step, pivot, and there. Step, pivot. When you're on your forearm, I always like to come up and pivot. So you'll notice if I'm here, foot goes down, pivot, press up, and switch. I'm not a big fan of adding a flow transition without coming out of that because you could risk injuring the shoulder if we're unstable at all. So be sure that you always pull up out of that before you pivot and transition. So going back to long lever arm, if I'm going to hold myself in a more advanced state and I'm going to do some leg, some arm choreography, whatever it is you want to do, just make sure that you're really lifted up through that shoulder. So I'm really lifting up. So you want to make sure that if you're going to be loading that shoulder for a prolonged time and you're going to do this like a series to challenge them, you might want to keep their heart rate up and cardio going instead of holding them there for 3 minutes doing variations. I might suggest you do like maybe a minute of something here, pivot, give them a little bit of rest by doing some arm work there, adding some leg choreography if you want, and then a stretch, pivot, and back onto that shoulder, just so they're not overly challenging their stabilizers in their shoulders. So now that I'm going to get a little bit more higher level, I'm going to increase my range up and down. So when I do my athletic classes, I enjoy this exercise because it allows me to, for me, with a shoulder injury, spine injury, to grab dumbbells and to stand there and do lateral raises with dumbbells, which is shoulder abduction, is something that is compressive top loading. So one of the exercises derived from needing to find something not top loaded was taking this on the floor, loading it up. Now, red and the blue is quite a challenge, but you can see I'm doing shoulder abduction. If I want to block the range, just come on in. So play around with those variations with the long box on. I'm going to take the long box off. And the reason why this is going to challenge the student or yourself more is because you're taking the incline of the body and decreasing it. So it's going to load the shoulder more. Let me put this aside. All right, so I'm a little closer and I'm not as high, so it's more load on the shoulder. Now, my reformer has a wooden lip. So if I'm gonna place this here, I'm definitely gonna put a pad. I don't think I have one readily accessible, but I'm gonna put a pad on there. Same rule applies with the hip and shoulder organization, or you can drop down on this one. I'm gonna have to take the blue off, drop down and do a side plank series here where you're rested for some students and lifted for others. Last but not least, let me show you the Hooked on Pilates Mini Max Arc. This one you definitely need a grip. Let me go behind camera. The pad or the grip underneath the Mini Max, even though it is lightly gripped, there's 3 strips. I still, for safety, I always want to put a grip pad in addition, so there's no chance of slipping. This is kinder on the wrist because it's squishy and soft. Let me go back up to a blue. So you might find that trying that on the wrist it feels more comfortable. I don't know that I would play around with wrist positions on that unless you have somebody that needs to externally rotate a little bit more due to an injury and they need to open the anterior socket. Here is totally comfortable. So this kind of works halfway between the box and the hand or forearm on the carriage. I suggest you play around with those now. I know I said last but least, but I do want to show you there are really great ways to do this without springs. So you can see there's no springs on here. So what I'm going to do, and this is high level, so make sure that your shoulder is over the hand and lift it up. So I'm hovering about that open, and I'm just going to do maybe some leg lower and lifts. And I'm getting tired because this 13 minutes on this, but you can see that there's some options there. Let me do my other shoulder away from the camera. Start with my shoulder over it, blocking myself. So if I get tired, I can get down there, and I'm going to do some leg exercises right there. So enjoy those different variations of star on the floor, or if you like to look at them as side plank variations, there is so much you can do playing around with different variations on the floor, whether you're using the carriage, forearm or hand, the Mini Max Arc, forearm or hand, or long box forearm or hand. Different leg choreography, and always remember to pad according, whether it's the side of the leg, the thigh on the frame, or the thumb in the hand. And prop it too. You can add some props. I've done it where I've just strictly stayed with a lateral movement and added some dumbbells. I've also taken the ring and I've had people hold, and I've done lat presses, side plank. So I'm telling you, there's so much you can do with that series. I guess there's 3 last but not least. Fully blocking it with no springs is a great opportunity to do some of those exercises. If a client is not stable, you can put it all the way out and do those series too. So you don't have to add that. You can take away that instability of the shoulder and block it. And that's definitely that sequence that I just showed you is in the No Springs Reformer workbook. So be sure to check that out. If you don't have it, get it, because what the No Springs can do is either challenge them, as we did in the front, to stabilize, or assist them by blocking it and working at the back of the reformer. Thanks for watching.